Hello, and welcome back to a very special episode of Twilight Wars browser app series. So today we're going over update 1.18, and I have been this excited about an update in a while, probably since the Necrovirus made their way into the Twilight Wars app. So the Ghosts of Creuss, here it is. They've waited a long time. One of our more recent polls, they got slightly edged out by the Necrovirus in terms of who people wanted to see implemented next, but they were a close second, and so now they get their time. And there's a lot to go over. The Ghosts of Creuss are the singular new addition to the app, but by no means is that a small addition. It is one of the bigger additions, along with every other faction that has made their way into our app. So let's jump straight into it here with their faction sheet. Now, the most interesting thing about the Ghosts of Creuss is definitely their faction abilities, which totally just alter the normal play of Twilight Imperium 4th. So for one, there's the addition of the Creuss Gate, which is a totally new system, completely separate from the main board. And so we'll see how that looks inside the app once we jump into the demo game. Then, of course, they're well known for their unique wormhole capabilities. And so their wormhole, all alpha, beta wormholes, are considered adjacent to each other, and no game effects can stop this from happening. So, for example, the particular game component that comes to mind is the agenda that shuts down the connection between wormholes. And so the Ghosts of Creuss will be able to just completely ignore that agenda if it's in play, for example. So that's pretty cool. And of course, let's not forget about Slipstream, which is going to give them their +1 movement as they come out of their home system, or if they have ships in a system that contains alpha beta wormhole. Plus that they start with gravity drive means they have the best mobility, I would say, in all of Twilight Imperium 4 base game. Now, they don't have any faction unit technologies, but they do have two faction technologies, which we'll see shortly. They do have the flagship, just like every other faction, and the ship acts as a new type of wormhole, a delta wormhole, which is similar, well, not similar, but exactly the type that is located in their home system. And so we'll see that as well come the demo here. Now, there is one slight, I suppose, implementation which we have altered just because of the nature of the automation in the Twilight Wars browser app. It has to do with one of their faction technologies, so we'll see that as well. So yeah, a very compact update, but a very big one. Update 1.18. So let's go and hop into our demo game here with, as Alice is the Ghosts of Creuss here with our new faction icon. So the first thing you'll notice is the new, if you are playing with the Ghosts of Creuss in your game, this new tile that will be located off of the board, just as if you were playing in a real game over the table. And this will be the Creuss home system, and you can see it has its kind of unique type of geometry compared to, say, any of the other systems that are perfect hexagons. The Creuss home system is connected only here by this delta wormhole tile that would normally be a player's home system, but in this case it's just a wormhole access point to the Creuss home system. Of course, the other access point is the flagship, but unless you're doing something tricky, the only way to get through to the Creuss home system is through this delta wormhole tile. Now, as far as perspective goes, normally the board is rotated for your perspective from your home system. That still is the case, but you'll notice, for example, if I go over to Bob's tab, who's the necrovirus, Bob has the board shifted for him, but the Ghosts of Creuss home system remains fixed in place here. So this is the connector point. And the reason for that is because there simply isn't a clean way to put this system in line with this delta wormhole, because, for example, the technology decks come up here. There's really no space to squeeze this in, and this seems to be a nice spot to have it just consistently placed for them. And then even going over to Charlie's tab. So yeah, that visualization there is number one, to abstract away the home system of the Ghosts of Creuss so that it is off of the board, and then to just find a consistent spot for it, and just to keep in mind that it is technically adjacent to this other delta wormhole system. So that's the Ghosts of Creuss home system. So let's see now. I know we want to go over the technologies, and I have both of those researched, and we'll start with the wormhole generator, and indeed we have implemented the omega exactly as written. So as an action, we can exhaust the wormhole generator omega card, and what we can do is we can place or move a Creuss wormhole token into a system that contains a planet we control or a non-home system that does not contain other player ships. So for those of you not familiar, the Creuss wormhole tokens are basically one alpha wormhole token, looks like this, and one beta wormhole token, looks like this, and they're mobile alpha and beta wormholes that we can maneuver around the board depending on if we're using this technology or not. So let's walk through how to use this technology. So the first thing is it's a component action, just like you would play a component action card. So when the game is asking you to perform an action, as long as you haven't exhausted the wormhole generator omega during your turn, you can use it. And you do so by double clicking. Now when you double click, you'll want to have the system that you want to select queued up here in the enlarged view. And you got to make sure that you're meeting the requirements of the card. Now, of course, the app will tell you if what you're doing is illegal. So let's kind of step through that. So for example, one of the things we cannot do is to place a token in another player's home system that doesn't have, well, our ships basically, right? Because it's an or, so either the system has to contain a planet we control or a non-home system that doesn't contain another player's ships. So first of all, we can't choose, say, the Clan of Stars home system because it doesn't have a planet we control, nor is it a non-home system. So if we click this and then we double click wormhole generator, we can't do that. Another thing we can't do is try to select a non-home system with another player's ship. So for example, the Dalbutha system, if we try that, we can't do that either because the system contains enemy ships. So we could pick anything else basically here. So for example, what we can do is even pick an anomaly like the asteroid field. And then if that's valid, now we'll be prompted to choose the type of wormhole, so the alpha or the beta. And so let's choose the alpha here. And then we'll be asked to confirm our choice. So We'll place the alpha wormhole token in the asteroid field system and confirm that. And now what you'll see here is that there's a kind of like a special UI where the token actually has this yellow border around it, and that's just to make it pretty much simple to pick out where that token is, as opposed to just like the alpha wormhole token. So it contrasts nicely with the blue background, I think. And so now, yeah, basically, these wormholes are connected here, including the one with the token. So that's the wormhole generator omega. Now, similar to that, actually, as we end our turn, we're going to take a look at the promissory note, which Bob has, and that is the Creuss if. And so the Creuss if pretty much works exactly the same way, except instead of it being a component action, the other player will be able to use it at the start of their turn and then carry on with their turn. So it works the same way, right? You place or move a Creuss wormhole token with the same restrictions as the technology that we just saw. So now, for example, we can, again, queue up a system here, right? So say, we want to queue up, let's say, this, the Lazar system, right? And now when we double click the card, again, we choose the type of wormhole. If we choose the alpha wormhole, the wormhole will move from the asteroid field. If we choose the beta wormhole, then we'll place a new token. And so, we could do that. We can play the beta wormhole and confirm. And now you can see the beta wormhole token shows up in the Lazar system. And so now both of the Ghosts of Creuss tokens are there on the board to stay or to be moved around if those text and promissory notes apply again. So those are the wormhole tokens and the two components, two cards that can move them around and such. Now let's go on to the second technology, which is a combat technology, which is the dimensional splicer. Now, the dimensional splicer we have changed, and we don't often change the way components work. The only time we do this is if we've gone through enough considerations where we think that the current way the card works would make the game too sluggish in terms of timing windows and complexity. And this kind of is similar to how we changed the timing of the Federation of Sol promissory note. But we're going to see here now how we've changed this. So dimensional splicer, we've made it read like this. So at the start of a space combat in a system that contains a wormhole and one or more of your ships, you may force your opponent to destroy one of their non-fighter ships. So what is different? The conditions are the same. So still at the start of a space combat, and you still have to be in a system that contains a wormhole and one or more of our ships. But what we've changed is this used to say that you can assign a hit to your opponent's ship. And basically what that meant was that they can sustain damage if applicable. They can use shield holding as well. And the reason why this was complex was because it opened an assign hits. It would open an assign hits timing window outside of combat, because this happens at well, not outside of combat, but outside of rolling dice for space combat, which basically would create a lot of complexity in nested timing windows. And so we decided to go the route of making it more like a assault cannon. So they have to destroy the ship, which means that they won't be able to sustain damage or cancel the hit because they're not assigning a hit. It's just destroying the ship like assault cannon. So the trade-off here, we hope, is good enough to keep it balanced, because the player who has to destroy the ship gets to choose. So that way the other player isn't the one choosing and could just destroy their war sun, for example. This player can choose a destroyer. The downside is, yeah, that we're deviating from the rules, but I think that in this case, it's going to be good because it allows the Ghosts of Creuss to make their way into the app, and we can always look to adjust this later, although I don't see us adjusting it in the near future, but I think it's good enough for now. And so that's how Dimensional Splicer is different than how it's going to work. Okay, so to show Dimensional Splicer, we'll go over to Bob's tab, and we'll get him to invade Alice's flagship here, which has the alpha wormhole, and then we can see that the Dimensional Splicer will get used, right? So, sorry, I'm in the wrong tab, this player, yeah. So Bob is going to activate the alpha wormhole system, and let's go ahead and pass on resolving an ability, and the same with Alice. And so now let's move this one ship here, just because. And now we can resolve abilities at the start of combat. So for Bob, let's not resolve anything. But for Alice, we're at the start of a space combat, so now we can use our Dimensional Splicer by double-clicking it and simply confirming. And then the game will prompt the other player, Bob, to destroy one of his non-fighter ships in the active system. And so in this case, he only has the cruiser, and he'll confirm that. And so his cruiser will now be destroyed. And so that's, and then we'll pass on that. And now since there's no ships left in the combat's over, and so we'll exit our way out of the ability rounds here, and then Bob will end his turn as the combat just ends. Okay, so that's the modified version of Dimensional Splicer there. Let's just quickly get through Charlie's turn by just activating a random system and not doing anything. And we'll get back to Alice. Okay. So now that we've gone over the faction technologies, I'll go over the flagship. So the flagship is the Hill Kalish, or Kalash. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce it. We'll just call it the Ghosts of Creuss flagship, I guess. And so the ship acts as a delta wormhole, which connects the home system here, since the home system has a delta wormhole. And it is unique in the sense that the game will actually ask us to choose whether we want to move the ship before or after the other ships have been moved. And the reason for this is just to keep it in line with the card. And there are some pretty niche, very niche circumstances where this can matter. But I think because right now the app trusts the player to pick up the infantry, that it actually, in most cases, won't matter. But just in case later on we expand the algorithm, the movement algorithm, to account for picking up infantry, then it certainly will matter. And I'll leave it to your imagination to concoct an example of why. But let's just go through this. So we can actually demonstrate a couple of things here. We can demonstrate how for the Ghosts of Creuss, the alpha and beta wormholes are connected, and also how the flagship can act as a conduit for units from the home system. So for example, we activate this beta wormhole, and let's pass on our resolving abilities. Now we can choose units to move. So when we choose the flagship, we'll actually get prompted here to move the flagship before or after. So think about it like this. If you choose to move it before, that means the flagship moves first, and then the units will become adjacent to the tile that the flagship ends up in. As opposed to if we move it after, that means that the units will become adjacent to the ship the flagship originally starts in. So most cases, you're gonna want to choose before, so that way your ships are pretty much guaranteed to make it into the system at the end. In very rare cases, you'd want to choose after, I think. But not to fear, because if you choose after, the game will tell you if your movement is valid, and then you can switch to before, and your units should be able to make it. And so, we want to get our units here to the beta wormhole. For example, our carrier, right? And we can take it along with our infantry, maybe these 3 infantry, and maybe another destroyer. And so these will end up here along with the flagship, right? And you can see that the movement is successful only because of the faction ability that makes these wormholes connected to each other. So the flagship could traverse this in 1 square instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. The carrier would have had to do 1, 2, 3, 4 as well. Now it could have got close because number 1, we have gravity drive, and number 2, we have that speed bonus, but that would only get it to 3. 1, 2, 3. And so it would need another boost there if my math is right and I'm not missing any game components. But because it's connected to the flagship, then it only technically moved 1 tile. I think I'm calling them squares, but they're hexagons, and even this isn't a hexagon, so tiles is what I should be saying instead. So that's in combination there, actually. We just saw quantum entanglement and the flagship. And the other 2, we've seen Creuscape is just default from the game setup, and Slipstream is self-explanatory. And that just about does it here for the Ghosts of Creuss. It's pretty cool to see them make their way into the app. We didn't know if it would be possible just because of how complex and how unique their faction is. There was a lot of unique things we had to implement that weren't generic, so to speak. And of course, we did have to make the change to dimensional splicer, which I hope isn't too big a change that will scare people off from having them in their games or wanting to play them. Kind of like the Federation of Souls promissory note. I think in the end it'll be nice to have them in the app with this deviation. But we'll definitely communicate that. We'll put it in the official documentation for rules deviations. We'll make a post in the Discord, of course, about it. But yeah, that is the 15th faction now from the base game to make their way into the app. And that just leaves 2 more. The Yin Brotherhood and the Mentat Coalition. And who knows, maybe we'll see them as well one day. But it's pretty great. I'm excited. I don't know when I'll be starting another game in the app, but when I do, I think I'll want to see these guys in it. And yeah, that's going to do it for update 1.18, the Ghosts of Creuss. So happy early Halloween, and enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next video.